Hi, everybody. Welcome to our today's Shakti Kula episode. Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to have you here. Today, I'm very delighted to have a very special guest. Today, we're going to have Rita Minassian with us. So, Rita is a natural born medium. She's a holistic and analytical psychology therapist, and she's the founder of the Akasha Institute. So, before further ado, we'll welcome. Hello, Rita.
Hi, Hera. Namaste.
Namaste. How are you doing?
Very well. Thank you very much for your invitation.
It is my pleasure. I'm so delighted to have you here. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to exchange and also to share a beautiful journey that you've been on and you're continuing on this journey. So maybe I would just ask you how this journey began for you.
My journey, I would say, is a very holistic journey with different layers, mind, body, soul, and emotions, of course, that had to be reshaped, reworked. And I believe it's the case for everyone to have an alchemical, a process in contacting our Shakti or Shiva energy. So I was born in Lebanon just before war. So the beginning of life was actually fantastic, like sea, sunny country, no sex yet, but a very pleasant beginning of life, a very joyful life. I was a spoiled little girl. My parents would expect me for a long time, so it was great until war, of course, arrived, and that changed the entire picture, of course. So for a little girl who was totally careless, I started to feel, of course, the anxiety of the adults around me and the unsafe environment. And I was a very introverted little girl, and a very sensitive one as well, because my intuitive abilities and my empath abilities were already there. So I was kind of absorbing what was going on around me already. But at that time, I wouldn't be able to process that. I wouldn't think, I would think it was mine. So anyways, one of a sudden, I shifted from that happiness to a very insecure environment, and where the priority was becoming just to survive. And the survival went on, of course, because we flee the country, and we were immigrants, and my families came to set in France. So it was a challenging beginning, a very challenging beginning, because one of the attributes of the Shakti energy is to be able to be in touch with your vulnerability, right? So how can you be vulnerable in this situation where you have to be super strong when you are struggling for your life, and you must be everything but not vulnerable. So that was very challenging. And plus, you add a mother figure that was not in contact with her Shakti at all. She was a very strong figure as well. So she couldn't be a role model for me. But just to say, at the age of, all little girls would go, to ballet school and be in touch with this graceful energy within themselves. Well, I was in a total opposite life environment. And then year passed, and I reached teenagehood, like everyone, naturally. And then the journey of the physical level started, really, I would say. Because as we all know about this, all these hours we spend in front of the mirror when we're teenagers, scrutinizing each centimeter. And this is part of the identity that we are looking for. and looking to set within ourselves. Who am I? Who am I? How am I? And it started like that also for at the physical level, like this Shakti energy. Like, what type of woman do I want to be? So, and an interesting thing that comes with teenagehood is this separation with the tribe, with the family example, to become a more unique individual. And that's why very often you have so much rebellious energies as well during this teenage time, because you don't want to look like your parents anymore. You want to set your own individuality. So for us women, of course, all the outside attributes are very important, like the makeup and the clothing, and little by little you try to figure out what type of woman you want to become. Then this process evolves, and you discover yourself through love, of course, through the encounter with the other one, and you see yourself through the eyes of the loved one. So when everything is okay, of course you feel like a goddess, and then not everything is okay, so sometimes it's quite hard. And then it evolves. So this, after the physical level, you reach also the emotional level here. When you get into adulthood, the question of who am I is still there, and what type of woman do I want to be? Still, it's a process, and you try to reach out these gracious energies that I was mentioning before, because for my family and for my environment, I was recognized as a very strong person, as a very assertive person, as a go-getter. And during our younger age, we tend to define ourselves through the eyes of others. We let others define us. So when I reached my adulthood, I was feeling that something was still not okay here, because I was more than what people would see in me. And I had this very important turning point when I met an astrologer, an old Buddhist astrologer in Paris. After a recommendation, a Jungian therapist gave me her details, and I went to see her. And this lady, she was like, I would say 72, a good 72 years old at that time, made my first reading. And I basically spent an hour crying, because she told me things that nobody could ever know about my childhood and my path overall, and my psychological process, really. Very intimate things. So it was very moving. And she told me something that really brought to the front a very important question that marked really the beginning of another level of search to contact this Shakti. Because of my Venus placement, she told me, you need to give birth again to your own female energies. You need to become your own mother. And this somehow opened something within me. And through counseling, I already had, a Freudian counseling before. I was in the process of a Jungian psychoanalysis this time. I worked on the balance of my Shakti polarity with the Shiva one. So in Tao, we would say the yin and the yang. In Jungian psychology, it is called the anima-animus balance. And this is a must to find, your inner center, your alignment, and to be really in touch with your soul, with your uniqueness. And this goes with a certain amount of shadow work as well, of course, because this assertiveness that was there, this go-getter energy was sometimes too much and sometimes completely down because I was trying so hard to be this Shakti as well, that I would let go of this Baal energy, this assertiveness that brings action also, that makes action possible as well, and that we all need. Because just as a reminder, we do all have both male and female, both the Shakti and the Shiva polarities within ourselves. So the counseling was very important in my life. I made it through that psychological level. Really brought a lot of enlightenment in my life. So here we go. I worked on the physical level, on the emotional level, on the psychological level, and mental level, of course. And the spiritual level was always there since the beginning of my life, because throughout the process, now I'm in my 30s when I'm meeting this astrologer lady who trained me, by the way, is because I really wanted to understand this language and to understand how you read these symbols. So she trained me into this language, and I add that expertise. But the spirituality was there all the time, and my intuitive abilities changed. It was a constant process of transformation, and I was very lucky also to travel a lot. So by traveling a lot, I made fantastic people, and most of all women, of course. I was very interested into contacting the different archetypal figures of the goddesses. So this led me to plenty of different civilization, like the Persian civilization, the Egyptian civilization, Armenia, of course, the land of my ancestor that I wouldn't know until 2016. And that brought also a lot of, I would say, a wealth of resource, really. So I don't know, something vibrate also probably in the DNA that make you like, oh my gosh, I can be that as well. So this is in me as well. It was very interesting, but this is a feeling that I would always contact wherever I would go, because we have this universal bond and an echo when we talk about archetypes and archetypal figures of the goddesses. Those figures are universal, and they resonate in every one of us. Even though we don't know them intellectually, they echo in the subconscious mind for sure. So it was a journey. It was a process. It is still, I must say, from time to time, because that balance is not always easy to maintain. But it's one of the topic of my life, actually, contacting this Shakti. It was a big job.
That's beautiful, the way you explain, and thank you for sharing as well. And at some point, of course, some of our paths have been very similar, growing up in similar places, and definitely what you were explaining in terms of, in terms of survival, we focus a lot on the Shiva energy and the doing and the survival, and which is the case in the current society as well, right? A lot of women forget that other aspect needs to be there to be balanced. Would you say that, I know you mentioned the person who had done the first reading and you received the training as well. In terms of inspiration, would you say any specific women or anything in particular that has inspired you towards the work that you do, or towards the work that you did for yourself as well?
Interesting. Well, I would say, the challenge in fleeing the country was that this split my family. So all my father's family and the women and my aunts were in the US, while we settled in France. So they couldn't be a daily source of inspiration, but they were there, of course. But with a distance. So it's just as if I was somehow deprived at the beginning of my journey from, I would say, inspirational figure within my family, just to connect that challenge. Because if not, there wouldn't have been any challenge if I had role models around me. So there is a logic to all this. Of course, when you're a child, it's difficult because you don't understand all this. But with the spiritual work, with the soul search that we can do afterwards, we have answers. So that's wonderful. But mostly, of course, therapists were very inspirational. Of course, I would mention this astrologer. But in my case, what I find wonderful is that there is inspiration in our daily life. So the woman who inspired me may not have even be with me for 24 hours because they just crossed my path. And especially during my travels, actually. I have an example in mind that I would like to share. During my second or my third trip to India, I wanted to visit the oldest Gurudwara in Delhi. So it's in Old Delhi. The Gurudwara, just as a reminder, is a temple for people practicing Sikh religion. And I really wanted to visit this place. So I went there with one of my friends, a female friend, and here we are in front of the Gurudwara. And of course, before entering the holy place, you have to remove your shoes and give them at the entrance. So I removed my shoes and I gave them at the entrance, and there were ladies here with the little bench, very well organized with the shoes just next to each other. And there was this lady who was there. I'm not even sure she was speaking English or not. But what I remember is that we didn't need any word to understand each other. I gave her my shoes, and she was wearing this very simple sari with a very nice, cloth on her head, a veil. She was looking like a Madonna, really. And I looked at her, like giving her a smile to thank her, because obviously I don't speak Hindu. And she answered to me with the most amazing smile. A smile I will never forget in my entire life. It gives me a goosebump actually to just mention it, because it was full of benevolence and gratitude for the respect I was showing for her religion and to come visit this, sacred place. And she didn't need, and I didn't need any words to understand. And with a simple smile, this lady changed my life forever. And I think that we tend to forget these simple daily things and how much, everyone can be an inspiration. We can be an inspiration for others with really small act of kindness. And that's very precious. So that's one of the examples. And of course, with people with whom I worked, like I mentioned, therapists and friends and etc. But simple people can also bring a lot of inspiration. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that beautiful story. Definitely, it's those moments of connection, right, with these people who inspire us, definitely. And I know you mentioned there's a lot of challenges that you have gone through your journey as well. Do you think you could attribute any of the challenges that were there because you were a woman?
That's a very good question. I would say the major challenges as a woman, I faced them in my professional life. Because before 2004, before starting to give consultation on a professional basis, I was working corporate, totally corporate in communication. And rising the scale of the hierarchy was very, very difficult. But at the same time, and it was not about competence, absolutely not. And but with the step back, what I realize is that some doors are closed on purpose because my path was not there, obviously. So I had to shift because until 2004, I had two parallel life in a certain way. There was my corporate life, and there was my intuitive abilities it was just, I was just using it for, for my family. My grandmother was a very big fan. She would call me and ask me, do you think this is going to happen? How is your uncle doing? And how is he going to travel? Because there is some fog or so it was a private thing, and until those two paths joined and I understood that I had to open my own practice and receive people and transmit information on a professional basis. So yes, I was blocked. Yes, there were challenges as a woman, and I know that environment very well. But in my case, I would say that it was just to take another path. Um, and it can be true for other women, actually. It can be true. Maybe inside, within themselves, they have other aspirations, but that are not manifesting. And the blocks on the road can be blocks, inner blocks, that are just manifesting in the outside world. So there is a lot behind the scene. I would say there is this reality, and we can also with more ethereal information have a reading between the lines.
Thank you for that. And actually, my question was going to be how you can overcome these challenges. And would you say that perhaps inner work or shadow work is what you would recommend?
Well, shadow work I wouldn't recommend, but unfortunately, it's there for everyone. So recommend shadow work is a bit, daring, but it is part of the journey for sure.
So perhaps maybe not to be afraid of it if that presents itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because when you face your monsters, when you understand them and you understand why this dynamic is there, then you realize that the monster becomes a little mouse. It's not that strong at all. So, and in some case, like in my case, I had not only to face my own shadows, but also with my abilities, the shadow of the collective unconscious. So the challenge was double, actually. So when you understand that, when you understand this is not part of yourself, and that brings tremendous, awareness of how in your daily life, when you are feeling some disbalance, you just, you're able to stop, to step back, and just to ask yourself the question: does this belong to me? Does this belong to me? Does this fear belongs to me? And that's very important, especially for empaths and for sensitive people who absorbs like sponge, everything around. So soul search, I will recommend for sure. Personal development, I will recommend for sure, because the more you bring back balance, this balance that we were speaking about, the anima animus or the Shiva Shakti balance, the more you feel aligned with your true purpose of life. And then the sense of lack that I was mentioning before, talking about my own journey, just disappears, because in any situation you feel perfectly centered, and it brings also a lot of sense of groundedness, which is extremely important, especially I would say for therapists. to be really, grounded. So recommending shadow work, not necessarily, but welcome to the club. You will have to face it. And personal development, definitely, because we're able to take the steps. And all of a sudden in the journey, one step feels higher than the other ones. Then in that case, seek counseling, seek expertise with the level of consciousness where you are, but go and find experts who've been there and who are able, to be your GPS. If your own GPS is like for a certain moment has stopped, you have, an outer GPS who can say, you can reset like this, and, you can go ahead. So definitely personal development and soul search and spiritual work if it's the inspiration and the inclination of the person.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. Would you like to talk a little bit about the work that you do currently?
Yes, why not? Well, I receive I give aura and chakra reading. That's my, I would say, first job. As I see auras since my childhood. And this is for people who would like to have a checkup in their life, for example, and know where they're standing in their spiritual journey, or also at a certain extent do some healing also, energy balance, of course, chakra reading also. For people who are very open, we do also some karmic work or ancestral work with a lineage work on the ancestors. That's a very important influence as well that we can have, because some patterns that I was talking about when I was specifying the subconscious, the collective subconscious, our ancestors' history is also in part of that story and in our DNA. So sometimes there are influences and there are interferences in our own path. So it's very important also for some people to go and explore that as well. And the second expertise I was mentioning also before is the the psychological astrology, Jungian astrology. And that is a very interesting coaching, I must say, that I added to my expertise. Because of this psychological approach, and we work on the archetypes, because we all have a chart with several archetypes that manifest at time. We all have the challenges, and when the step is a bit too high, it's very interesting to see what are the keys to make it and to get out of a difficult situation and to transform and to go through this alchemical process that transformed the lead into gold, actually. And that's very precious, I think. And that's the two main coaching type that I'm providing. And I'm also working on my book, of course. So that's another journey.
Okay, so that's coming up soon?
Soon, I don't know, but I'm working on it.
And my question would be, the work that you do, let's say, how do you feel does it empower or in what way other women to express Shakti in their own way?
Absolutely. I was mentioning this reading with this old lady previously who, according to the placement of my Venus, could tell me things that touched me so much. So, through the archetypes represented by this planet on our individual chart that is very unique, we are able to do this work with the consultant to see how it is possible to bring that balance, and also to live the Shakti in the most balanced way, of course. So yes, we do. It's a fantastic exploration, because each person is different, each person is unique, and the path cannot be compared, even though we have common, of course, I would say experiences. But each path is really unique. So it's very interesting to go to the root of our own soul, to really be living a fulfilling life, in one word.
I love what you said, because that's really essential for women to understand that each path is unique. And what would be your advice to women who seem to be struggling in a world that they may not find that expression, because they may feel like, okay, well, if I want to express my divine femininity in this way, is that the only way? What your advice would be, let's say, to women?
I would say that the danger in what you mentioned of not being in touch with this divine feminine energy is to become too Shiva. And as a woman, if you use Martian tool instead of Venusian tool, or both Venus and Mars together, both polarities in a balanced way, there will be a sense of lack for sure. It's not the aim of our life is not, as a woman, is not to live it through the Martian energy, through the Shiva energy. There is way too much Martian energy on this planet, which is bringing tremendous amount of wars. So it is very important as female to understand that there is a lot of strength also in the divine feminine and in the vulnerability I was mentioning at the beginning of our conversation. Because when you are vulnerable is not being weak. Being vulnerable is to accept, also to be receptive, to be more poised, than to be assertive and constantly into action. So with this vulnerability and also this receptive energy, we are able also to receive information at other levels than just the mental level. And that's very, very important. That's the way you balance actually your left brain and your right brain. If not, it won't work. And since the Me Too movement, we're seeing a lot of women who are becoming like almost warriors. And I think it's a pity, because if you want to show the example, the example can be shown only by being connected to these, receptive, compassionate, and kind energies as well. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, we're going to leave all doors open to become carpets. It's absolutely not the case. But in this situation, I would take the example of ahimsa, for example. Ahimsa is a very good example because it is the principle of nonviolence. And that principle of nonviolence is based on universal love. But in ahimsa and in the universal love, self-love comes first as well. So it's not a narcissistic type of love, but a self-respect. So if we are in this principle of compassion and kindness, we have to be also able to respect ourselves. And there is an example of Mahatma Gandhi that is perfectly fine for ahimsa. Is Gandhi says, when the mosquito is around you and it's, starting to bother you and to bite you, are you going just to remain, still and not say anything just for the sake of compassion and kindness? No, absolutely not. You kill the mosquito, because it's not about being eaten by it, And this is the principle of ahimsa. So being in a non-violent frame of mind, a receptive, a Shakti energy, really, in a poised way. But this doesn't mean that the self-respect shouldn't be here. The self-respect should be here. But too much Shiva energy will bring too much assertiveness and aggressivity. And this is what we don't need, on this planet anymore.
Totally, I agree with you. And my other question would be to create a world that the next generation, either boys or girls, to really fully connect within themselves and to create that balance, that harmony. What's your advice would be either for parents or for just people who are influencing the children of today who are going to be the next generation?
This is a tricky question because it really depends on the personality of the child, I think. There are introverted child and there are extroverted children, sorry. So it requires to adapt constantly. So it's not easy for the parents. Let's speak about the parents before the teachers or the workers, social workers like you in contact with children. First of all, parents shouldn't be feeling guilty, I think, because there can be a lot of guilt also in the process, because parents, they want to do the best for their kids and they feel it's never enough. But we choose our body for this incarnation. We choose our family for this incarnation. So everything is fine, and the life path will, be fluent for that soul. So everything is okay. It's perfect. But I would say to adapt to the personality of the child. If the child is too introvert and too, like constantly flying away, I would advise to balance with more mental activities and even physical activities like sport to bring them back in their body. Yoga is a very good option because it balances both, the earth and sky, so the body and the spiritual level. So that's a good option for both introvert and extrovert. And for extrovert, it would be probably to set some time to help them understand how to poise, having gaps for meditation, for example. Now we're living in a world that is totally opening. It's just fantastic. And I read not a long time ago an article about schools in England who are bringing meditation into their routine. I think it's just fantastic. If we want a more compassionate generation, this should be, integrated to their education from early age. And meditation is a very good option. But for children who are not really grounded, balance it with physical activities. That would be. It's always about a balance, finding the balance, the pathway in the middle. So it's not an easy one, but it's always the best choice.
Thank you for that. And of course, adapting meaning as well, letting the child explore their full potential, right? And we as adults, when we do that work, then we're more open to allowing for the next generation.
Absolutely. I was about to add that as adults, the more we work on ourselves, the more there will be an influence on the younger generation, of course. So soul search and personal development are always, not only good for ourselves, but we also influence, our environment and our tribe and society at large. Not to mention that at the level of the collective unconscious, whatever transformation we do at our scale, we also influence all humanity by extension. So that's interesting, I think.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Rita, for all this. I think it's tremendously inspiring for everyone. If for those who are watching, they'd be interested in knowing more about you, I know we have the website here in the description of the video. Do you offer services overseas online?
Absolutely, and I would say more than ever with this quarantine that people are experiencing around the world. So I didn't stop actually to work during the quarantine in France, and I'm still providing sessions in the US and in other countries in the UK. I wouldn't want to go very much online because we talked about that before. Because of the interferences, I'm always like very careful with that. the electrical interferences during the channeling, but it seems to work okay. So yes, I'm doing them, and I want to thank you very much for your invitation, Hera, and also to thank you to be an inspirational woman as well, because not only as a yoga teacher, we don't know each other personally, but I think that what you're doing for your community as a yoga teacher and a social worker is really fantastic in Montreal. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. I think we could spend hours talking and hopefully looking to really connect with you in person soon.
Hopefully, yes. Whenever we can travel.
Thank you once again, Rita. And for those who are interested, you can check out her website and you can connect with her directly. And thank you once again, Rita, and we'll connect soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for being part of this Shakti Kula episode. Looking forward to seeing you next time. And if you like, you can subscribe, and that way you can receive notifications for our next episode. Take care.